All right, we're here with the newest edition of the Driveline podcast. I'm Tanner Stokey, Director of Hitting, here with Connor White, Director of High Performance, and Matt Kress, Pitching Coordinator. Today we're going to get into mostly getting into summer, how you should spend your summer season, your high school, college baseball player coming off your spring season, what you should prioritize in the summer, what types of guys should look to play summer ball, what types of guys shouldn't, and how you should handle both those situations. So how are we doing, fellas?
Good. Another beautiful day.
Another beautiful day.
Hey, nice to
Let's
connect with you guys on the other coast.
good to see you, Kress.
Yeah,
Good to see you.
long range Driveline podcast.
Cool. Where do you guys want to start?
I think the first step is really like our first step with anything. It's like for any guy, it's figuring out where are you? Where do you want to go? How do you get there? Like I think that like those are the three big questions. Like any period of time. Like if you're a high school sophomore and it's where do I want to be wrapping up my senior year and going into college, or if you're a college junior getting ready for the summer before your last year of eligibility. I think those three questions are like where it starts for any guy.
Yeah, the thing that I keep thinking about as well is just with how travel ball and how the transfer portal have been kind of like changing things in that world of college baseball. Just how important it is to fully understand like where you're at and where you're going. So I mean, even when it starts with like a high school athlete, with how big the transfer portal is and how easy it is for a college coach to just turn around and find somebody who can throw some innings for them or play a position that they have a hole at. It just makes it just makes it super necessary as an athlete, a high school athlete specifically, for you to come in and actually be ready to compete with people that are 21, 22, 23 years old, which was never an issue when any of us were like actually playing.
Yeah, and take that a step further. Since MLB cut down the roster sizes, right? Cut down the length of the draft. There's less opportunities for the older college players to get into pro ball. There's obviously more independent ball teams, leagues now than ever. But again, like the talent level in those leagues is very different because the affiliate organization roster spots are much smaller. So those guys that previously would have gone in the 20 rounds in the draft, a lot of those guys have trickled into indie ball. A lot of the guys who would have gotten picked up out of college in their junior, senior year, maybe they're staying an extra year. Maybe there's a grad year mixed in. Those guys are staying around longer, so there's less spots for the high school guys. So for the high school age guys specifically, it's much harder to get to the high level colleges out of high school. So like what are some of the specific things the high school sophomore and junior should be focused on specifically going into their senior year? Let's start on the HP side.
I think that's a really good place to start. And I think the first step is like honest evaluation, and that means like across your total game, like where am I at physically? Because high school sophomore or junior is a wide array of dudes, right? Like that is a broad window. There's guys that look like they're 12 and there's guys that look like they're 19. So figuring out where you're at in terms of like physical maturity, physical development, what ground do you need to cover physically to cut it on a college field? Because we see significant gap. The most significant gaps we see between high school and college guys, and then even college to pro ball is still a significant gap, is in the body weight, the maximal strength, and the explosive strength, the power. It's over 20% difference on average between our high school guys and our college. And that's big. Like you have to be physical enough to get on the field. Like especially like you said, with the average age creeping up these days, the physical maturity at the college level is really high, and you have to do the work to get there to have that physical presence to be on the field.
Yeah, I saw something on Twitter. I think it was yesterday actually about the average age of college baseball players. It's like a year and a half older than it was a couple years ago.
Yeah, I saw something that was like over 21.
Yeah. 21 and change. Yeah. Close to 22 years old.
Yeah.
Something crazy like that.
Really crazy.
But yeah, so it all comes back to like that self-evaluation, and it starts with where you are. And with that, I think one of the hardest things to do, especially at the high school level, is to take that step back and really take into account all the context of like what level you're actually playing at what the competition level is like in the state you're playing in, right? Because you could be the kid who plays at like a small school and you're the big fish in a small pond, and like you could just out athlete your competition. You could just
Sure.
have like really successful numbers, but that just because you're really successful at your level doesn't necessarily mean it's going to scale to the college level, right? So it's like really important to figure out where you're at physically, really important to figure out where like your tools are at,
Yeah.
skill side, hitting side, obviously things like your bat speed, your bat to ball skills. Are you swinging, missing a lot? Are you striking out a lot? Despite putting up pretty good numbers overall, like if you're striking out a lot at a lower level high school program, even though overall your numbers are good, like that's one of the things that is not going to scale to the next level as the competition around you gets better. And the same thing on the pitching side, right? Like you could, you're playing at a small school or something, right? Like you could just be dominating bad competition, kids that aren't going to go play college baseball. You could be dominating them just because you throw a ton of strikes, or maybe you throw harder than everybody else. So there's a lot of things that go into it. It's like not only should you be evaluating like your skills specifically, you should be able to take that step back and figure out where you are relative to the competition around you and where you are and how you stack up to the guys at the next level.
Yeah, and a lot of times I think about, it's very hard to get that perspective on where you line up versus your competition, and that's one of the beauties of honestly the product that we kind of provide our athletes, which is that like 3,000 foot view of like where you line up against your peers and where you even line up against somebody who is a step or two above where you're currently
Mm-hmm.
at. And so that's something that I always love to do in athlete meetings, and is say like, hey, you're in high school and you're really strong for, or you throw really hard for the high school level. But then when I compare you versus the collegiate counterpart that you're about to like go into next year, next fall, whatever the case may be, like there's still some room to grow here. And we really need to be better if we want to make sure that like we can actually like secure that spot going forward. The other thing that, the back and forth here has kind of made me think about was even like our own careers and just thinking about like, when I was in high school and what did I need to do to get recruited and so on and so forth. And something that I always thought about was just like the, proliferation of like travel baseball. And I know that like Devin has a lot of, discussion points about that on the academy side. But I just think about how many times that I basically like wasted money, days, time, all of that weekends of my time just like playing games when I wasn't ready to actually be in front of those coaches. It was just like somebody throwing low 80s and trying to get signed by like a power four like team is just like, come on, man, it doesn't make sense, and that's really like a waste of my time. And so I'll put a bow on it by saying like when you look at it in the end, that's what we try to do here at Driveline is like we try to give you an idea of like, yeah, man, like these are what these power four guys look like, and they are absolute monsters. And guess what? You're not that close, and we need to build these pieces of your game to make sure that if that is your goal in the end, that we can actually get close to it or actually have like a fighter's chance to make that dream a reality.
Yeah, completely agree. Well, one of my favorite things we do, right? Like obviously our assessment process is really really great, but we have so much data, so much information from different players at different levels, different skill sets. It's like really easy for us to see. It's like, all right, you're this high school kid here. This is where the average high school athlete's at. This is where the average college athlete's at. Pro, MLB. You're here for these specific reasons. You need to get this done on the high performance side. You need to do this on the skill side. So you take the information, figure out where they're at. You put together a plan to get them to where they want to be, where they need to be to perform at the next level or make it to the next level. And then you just run like a really sound test retest process in between where you're constantly iterating on everything you're doing, making sure it's working, and everything's tied to that initial evaluation, the retest, and the goalposts kind of keep moving over time as you start to hit targets, goals throughout your program. So that being said, what should guys be focused on going into the summer? So like obviously the main thing we're trying to get into here is basically the debate on whether or not you should be playing summer ball. And in most cases, I lean towards it not being worth your time. There's obviously situations where, especially if you're in a higher level league, you have a scout, somebody wanting you to go play so they can see you get more innings, things like that. But generally, like what are the main things to take into account here? Let's start on the HP side.
I think the balance there, again, just we're gonna say it probably so much, but it comes down to like the honest evaluation of need. Because if what you need is to develop, That doesn't mean that you can't play games, you can't compete, but it means that the balance needs to be skewed towards a side that's going to be optimizing your development.
Yeah, you can definitely do both. It makes it harder. But
And we often we're thinking about it like in phases or in like spring, summer, fall, but really like it's a constant flow through, and it's your training year, right? So like if you just played your high school spring season, like you got games in that yearly training plan. Like you got competition. That's super important. I wouldn't advise people to take like a gap year as a high school sophomore or something like that. Like stoking that competition, tapping the gas on that is like important part in the development for young players for sure. But most of your year, if you are that underdeveloped, whether that's high school or college, if you're underdeveloped and you need more time to develop, it's going to be really hard to do that while still prioritizing games. So if you're, again, that underdeveloped, whether that's high school or college, playing summer ball while chasing physical development is going to either mean you're playing and you're sore and you're fatigued and you're not putting your best product out on the field, or you're cutting back on the physical development in order to be ready on the field. And if you're seriously focused on your physical development and you're sacrificing your physical development, then you're not really that serious about your physical development.
Right. Yeah. So what specific types of guys, you mentioned the guys that like you played your whole season. It's like, obviously if you're playing a bunch during the spring season, whether it's high school or college, playing all the time, getting a ton of at bats, say you're pretty successful, or even if you struggle, right? Like the guy that's playing a lot, generally you should spend the off season developing. Like on the flip side, if you're a guy, maybe you got hurt during the season, you weren't able to play a much. Maybe you're like a younger player at the level. Maybe you're like a freshman, sophomore kid that gets time on varsity but isn't playing every day. Or you're the red shirt in college, the freshman in college, and you're not getting a ton of innings, not getting a ton of at bats. It's like maybe then you should spend a little bit more time getting at bats in the off season. And specifically, if a lot of times your coaches are the ones that are driving where you're going to play in the summer, what you should be doing. But that's where it really gets important, where you have to, again, self-evaluate, figure out where you are and decide, regardless of the situation you're going into. Like I said, sometimes you have to play summer ball because that's what your college coach wants you to do. But you need to be able to take your career into your own hands and understand that, yes, I have to go get these at-bats because my coach wants me to go play in this league. But I know that I didn't play all year because my skills aren't good enough. Whether that's like on the physical side, the high performance side, you really need to crush the weight room, get stronger, more powerful, or you need to refine your stuff, maybe add more pitches, increase your bat speed, clean up your bat path, improve your batted ball profile. It's like you just have to evaluate yourself and figure out what your focus needs to be, whether or not you're playing in the summer. It's like Connor said, like you can focus on both. It's much harder if you really want to lean into development and play. You're generally going to be more sore when you're playing, right? And a lot of times, one of the tricky parts here, one of the harder things to navigate is that a lot of times guys want to go play in the summer to get seen, right? So it's like if you're focused on trying to get seen, you want to put up good numbers in the summer, you're not going to focus on your development as much, right? And if you are going to focus on your development much, like you said, you're going to be sore more often. It's probably going to take away a little bit from your performance. And at the end of the day, that's fine, right? Like there's some value in your summer ball stats, depending on the league specifically. That's the main thing. It really depends on the league. There are a few leagues that are worth really caring about. Like the obvious easy one is the Cape, right? If you're going to play in the Cape, that's really important, right? Like you're a high level prospect. Somebody wants you there. Somebody wants to see if you perform, it's going to help your draft stock. But if you're playing in your local summer ball league just to get at bats, like nobody cares about those stats. Nobody's looking at those. And you're probably playing in that league for a reason. So you should be more focused on your development.
Yeah, the other thing, and actually, I want Tanner to tell this story because it was on the hitting side. It was just like how wild of a story that like Bazana was on surrounding like having an opportunity to play in the Cape and then like just deciding that he wanted to, train and like fix some of the holes in his game. It's like this
Crazy.
guy's the number one pick and he opted out. Now it wasn't his draft year, so you need some of that context, but like opted out of playing summer ball because he knew he needed to fix his game.
Yeah, so came over from Australia, played in the West Coast League with the team in Corvallis before going to his freshman year at Oregon State. Had a great year his freshman year, and he had an invite to go play in the Cape. The believe it was a new CBA. It changed something along like the draft rules with international players, obviously being from Australia. It pushed his draft year back another year. So it's like his agent called me. And this is the things like normally I'm going to tell guys like you shouldn't play summer ball unless it's the Cape, especially like younger players at the college level. It's like you should spend this time developing. Like Bazana just came off a great year, hit for a high average, stole a ton of bags, but he self-evaluated himself and knew that his skills weren't exactly where they needed to be. He needed to hit the ball harder. He needed to improve his ball flight, specifically to the pull side. So his agent called and he was like, "Hey, I got this kid, really good, played at Oregon State, freshman, awesome season. He has an invite to the Cape, but he wants to bang that and train at Driveline." My initial reaction was like, "Man, that's probably a bad idea."
Yeah, what's this guy
You know,
talking
like
about?
for the last 3 years, I'm like, if you get a chance to play in the Cape, you should probably go play in the Cape. Otherwise, you should generally be focused on your development. So initially, I was like, this guy's insane. He's like, "Oh, you're gonna love this kid." Like he told me, he's like, "You're gonna want to hire him when he's done playing." And I was like, "Yeah, whatever, dude." But he was right. Like I would hire Bazan in a heartbeat. He'd be an amazing coach, amazing employee at Driveline. But he's an amazing baseball player. So he's a guy that specifically decided that it wasn't the best idea for him to go play in the Cape, which I thought was insane at the time. Spent all summer here, went all in on his development, added a ton of bat speed, did a ton to clean up his swing mechanics, ton to clean up his bat path. Big impact on his batted ball profile going into the next year. Next year was obviously very, very good. He still stayed all in on his development. He's insane. Just like wanted to continue refining his skills. He was very likely going to be first round comp pick regardless because he's a good baseball player, but because he made that decision, that self-evaluation, take the step back to really put his career in his own hands and focus on what he thought was going to provide the most value, he turned himself into the number one overall pick.
When he actually comes down to like a great example looking back of like the guy who shouldn't play summer ball because what was holding him back from where he wanted to go, which almost feels like a silly thing to say if you're already going to be a first rounder, wasn't translating his tools to the field. The tools that he had were translating to the field. Those things were showing up in the spring. It was growing those tools because he was already a really high, like if you think of like engine versus efficiency, like he was translating everything he had to the field at a really high rate. So the answer for like, okay, what's the next step is get more gas in the tank, build more juice, whether that's technically like refining things in the cage and just building a better physical profile. Like,
yeah, and that was the thing with him. Like I said, he hit for a high average. Like he was a guy that the bat to ball, contact skills, swing decisions, that stuff graded out really, really well. Like he was very, very good at those things, but there just wasn't enough impact. Wasn't hitting the ball hard enough. Wasn't driving the ball enough in the air, specifically to the pull side. And he was aware of it. He came in saying like, these are some of the things I want to focus on. And, you know, we refined it a little bit and put a plan together, and he was on board and just truly got after it and changed his life, changed his career.
Yeah. And look, not all of us can be Travis Bazana, and like we all know that, right? But I think a lot of times what ends up happening is like an athlete doesn't have that perspective on where they're at in their career. And so it requires something like, getting an assessment, having that like objective data to figure out, hey, you know what, I'm actually like really lacking in these areas, and this is how I can move forward. And even furthermore with how like the transfer portal kind of has, become such a big thing. You know, you can come and figure out like, hey, if I want to throw harder, like I need to be in the weight room with Connor White, like figuring these pieces out. Or, hey, I need to be working on the floor and figuring out, what piece of the puzzle here on the mechanical side is what's really leading me. Or maybe I need to add a pitch. So I think even furthermore, it's just kind of like a testament to, using something like the test retest model to even just figure out how am I going to go about my summer, right? Like just like the year ends, come down to Driveline, and let's actually see how I stack up with my dreams. My dreams to like transfer up to a bigger school. I can test and figure out how do I compare to what that school's level is. Or, hey, if my goal is to get drafted, I can come and I can really compare myself to what that next level is. And, there's not many places in the world that are able to do that, and let alone then like drive, okay, here, this is how we're actually going to chase that deficiency and try to get your dream to become a reality.
Yeah, and like you said, Bazan is the perfect example of this. We got a ton of content on him. You want to go on the YouTube page, there's definitely more stuff on him. But he's a perfect example of that. There were multiple times during his last 2 seasons where he had a decent weekend and had a Monday off, and he drove 4 hours up to Seattle, hit for an hour, retested, and then drove 4 hours back just to go to class the next day, practice the next day, because something didn't feel right. So he's that perfect example of basically living and dying by that test retest model. He wanted to know exactly where he was at. He wanted to know why he was struggling with what he was struggling with, why he was missing pitches he was missing, and he wanted to know exactly how to fix it, how to change it. So he's the type of guy who truly abused the data in the best way possible because he wanted to use that information to make himself better. Like he's just like the perfect example of the no stone unturned. You know, he wanted to be great and he was doing everything he possibly could to be great.
When you have those data points, right? Because with the assessment, like you're finding out the like what's the weak link, right? Like he's seeing like you're getting the force plate info, he's getting the expected bat speed, he's getting the actual technical info in a less constrained way than, or a more constrained way than the game, right? Less context. It's off the machine. We got the mocap going. All of that we can see. Like, is it physical? Is it technical? And he has his feels in the game. He knows like something's not ending up here. What step of the process working backwards is going wrong? And you might find out that these two things are in the right spot and it's translating into the game that matters the most. And that's the guy that needs the game reps. But if the breakdown is happening somewhere before then, the only way to find out is to test your tools.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and like he's a guy, type of skill set, great bat to ball skills, great swing decisions. It's like was already very successful on the field, but he needed more juice, right? Like he needed to build the engine, he needed to get stronger, more powerful physically. Oddly enough, we definitely did a ton of bat speed training with him, still do, but a lot of his initial gains in the bat speed side were more technical, more mechanical things to move more efficiently. And then once he started to clean up some of the postural issues, some of the path issues, moving more efficiently led to more speed, more controllable speed, specifically the things that do translate to the game onto the field. Because like you can make gains in training, like you said, like if it's not translating to the field, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, everything you're doing needs to map to the field. That gets back into what you were talking about of like that yearly training plan, operating the retest cycles in between it. It's like you're basically setting everything up for like, when do you really need to compete? When does it really matter? And then building out the plan, working backwards from that. That's going to be different if you start in December. It's going to be different if you start in June. It's going to be different if you start in October, right? But everything has to map towards when it really matters to compete, which brings us back to the initial point of this conversation. Like, does it really matter if you perform in summer ball? Generally not, especially if you're younger. It matters in higher level leagues where the competition's better. If you're a draft prospect and they're looking to see you hit with a wood bat, or on the pitching side, if they're looking to see you pitch against better competition, maybe you're pitching in a mid major and you're just dominating your competition, right? Like your stuff is good, you project well. Like let's see how you perform against the top prospects of the country, right? Like that's the kind of thing that could truly change your draft stock. But all that being said, if your skills aren't actually up to par where they need to be, and you go in to do that sort of thing to play summer ball, to get seen, and you're not ready, you're only going to hurt your draft stock. You're going to make things worse, right? Like the most important thing is performing during your spring season at the high school and college level. And then anything like mixing in the Cape or higher level leagues, right? Like you get a little bit using wood bat, there's a little bit different level of competition, but generally it's all going to come back to how well you perform during the season.
Yeah, I think this even puts me in like a great situation. I know I've talked to a lot of my athletes about what they're trying to do this summer, and I think this is actually like a pretty good question for Whitey. But like, I had an athlete that was talking to me like at the Division II level, is throwing pretty well early in the season, is probably going to throw like a lot of innings, but like is very much like a Division II pitcher, just kind of like low 80s, throwing strikes, just getting outs. And so in some regard, I always think about how he's kind of like stuck in the middle, right? Where it's like, hey, he gets outs, like there's a lot of good things going on here, but like also alternatively, like probably isn't a draft stock, like doesn't have draft stock, isn't going to get drafted. And so the athlete actually hit me up and was like, I was thinking about just taking like the summer off and not throwing. And I was like, oh my Lord, like, let's sit down and have a conversation. But Whitey, if I'm like that athlete and I'm kind of breaking it down for you, like, how are you going about that conversation to kind of, lead me to, become a better baseball player?
Can I interject real quick?
Go for it.
To me, that's something that's pretty common we get with hitters. And to me, the place to start with that conversation is just looking the dude in the eye and being like, what are your goals? What do you actually want? Where do you actually want to get to? So like you said, like pretty successful D2 pitcher, and like you're a good baseball player. Like you're just successful where you're at. Like that's fine if that's what you want to do. Be a good D2 pitcher. That's fine. More power to you. But if your goal is to transfer to a D1 next year, if your goal is to get drafted, like you have to be very aware of where you're at, right? That's what the thing we started this conversation with was like that initial evaluation, where you're at relative to your competition, relative to where you want to get to. Like that guy, if you want to transfer, it's like, yeah, you put up great numbers this spring, but the competition isn't good, right? Like if you take the exact person you are and put it into the SEC next year, you're going to get dominated because you're not throwing hard enough. Your stuff isn't good enough. All that being said, if you spend the summer doing nothing, you're definitely not going to get better. But if that type of guy would spend the summer really focused on getting stronger, more powerful, building the engine, being able to throw harder, refining the stuff, like you're already a good pitcher. Same thing with the Bazana example. You're already a good hitter. You improve these things, it's only going to make you that much better. Sorry for interrupting. I'll let you take over there.
No, I mean that's the right perspective. I think like with a guy like that, like one the question of like I was thinking about just like not throwing, or the statement of that is, I think like the right directional thought of like the throwing isn't exactly what I need right now, but it's kind of just like the misunderstanding, right, of how training economy works, because there's probably close to never, except for like a guy who's post-op, for a surgery, where a guy's like all of his training economy is going to go to the weight room, um, because there's almost definitely going to be some left over that should be at least going to maintaining the skill. Because if your physical ability goes up and your technical ability goes down, you didn't get better. You just traded, right? You traded technical for physical. You didn't get better. The goal is always going to be to either increase one and maintain the other, or some combination thereof. So a player like that, that's where I think like the expected velo and the comp scores and everything in the mocap, getting your percentiles and all of that is super valuable, because you can see like in a tangible score, like I threw 84 in the mocap. My expected velo is 80. That means that my output I'm getting 4 more miles an hour out of my body than the average guy. It means my skill's in like a decent spot relative to my physical ability. Mm-hmm. What's holding me back is probably going to be the thing that I'm 40th percentile at, not the thing that I'm 60th percentile at or 70th percentile at, right? Because it's almost always going to be easier to improve. Like that's why we talk about lowest hanging fruit, like improve the lowest qualities. And so for a guy like that, like getting that baseline really early in the summer is super valuable. And that's where for a guy like Travis, you talk about like getting those data points in season is really awesome, because then you can make sure like, am I actually maintaining what I think I'm maintaining?
Yeah. Yeah, we had those same data points at the start of the offseason, middle of the offseason, at the end of the offseason, going into the fall, during winter break, and then we'd retest him right before the season when he was really, really dialed. It's like, all right, you're in a really good place. We have this information. We have this snapshot of who you were at time, and things were great, right? So you always have that point to reference back to when something's going wrong, which is exactly why during the season he spent 8 hours of his life driving up back and forth just to retest and see where he's at, to make sense of what's going on. Right? He's like, okay, I see I'm struggling with this type of ball flight. I know before when I had this issue, I had these postural things going on. I don't know if that's an issue right now, but let's retest it and check and compare to where we were when things are really, really great. So it's like the importance of an assessment evaluation at all times, but it's not just like an initial assessment. It's the importance of, again, we're going to keep beating the dead horse here. It's like the importance of like that test retest cycle, tracking the progress over time, figuring out what's working, what specifically works for you, how you need to iterate on certain things. When you're struggling with certain things, where can you point back towards so you can make those changes faster? And just like you run that cycle over and over and over again, you're just going to know yourself better. You're going to be able to make adjustments faster. You're going to be able to make adjustments not in the off season. You're going to be able to make them during the midweek. You're going to be able to make them between at bats, between innings, things like that, because you have a better understanding of yourself.
Right. Yeah. And coming back to that athlete, or that kind of athlete, right? Say you find out it's the physical development. You really need to push the envelope there, because if his goal is to get drafted, his goal needs to be at least hitting low 90s, right? Even if like the stuff is plus, the command is plus, and good stats, like realistically, if you're looking to get drafted throwing mid 80s, not looking in the right spot. So that means that even if he's that guy that gets 4 extra miles an hour out of his body, that's a significant gain that he needs to see on the physical side to get to. Maybe he doesn't need to get the physical side to expected velo 90, expected velo 95. Maybe he's not going to be a 80th, 90th, or 100th percentile physical athlete. That's not who he is. But bringing it up to the point where it's no longer holding him back is step one, right? And during that time, that's where we can on ramp on the throwing side. We can increase the throwing fitness after, if you threw in a lot of innings in the spring season, take what time we need off that week, that 2 weeks, whatever that is for the individual, and then have a clean on ramp, have a lot of capacity built up on the throwing side. So once that phase in the weight room starts to transition into more intensity, lower volume, and it pairs better with, now it's time to go chase output on the skill side. Now it's time to go into a velo phase. And there's 3 months of a summer right there where, I mean, we see over 3 months, your average college guy that we see is going to get like 1 to 2 miles an hour of expected velo. And that's a pretty wide range. Certainly guys get over that. Certainly guys can get under that. But the 3 months of a summer is a good amount of time. But for that guy that needs to cover a lot of ground, that's part of thinking about his timeline, right? Going back into fall ball, like, should I be throwing lives 5 months out from my spring season if I'm throwing 6 miles an hour under what I think I need to be throwing in my spring season?
Mm-hmm.
Like that summer decision and that yearly training plan needs to be thought of like in that big picture. Because if you're just thinking like, oh, I'll take the first month of my summer off. All right, now you need to spend another 4 to 6 weeks building back up. Now you have like 3 or 4 weeks left in your summer to try to gain a couple ticks. That's just not enough time, man. So coming in, knowing where you're at, so that way after that first 6 weeks, that first half of your summer, you know how much progress did I make and what's next. Those 3 months can take you so far, but it's building it into that yearly training plan. Like, you got the competition part in the spring, get the development going, and then find out where you are going into the fall, because the guy who still needs to earn a job in the fall is going to be different than the guy who was the Friday guy as a sophomore, or was getting weekend innings out of the pen as a freshman, right? If you have having that perspective on exactly what you need out of competition,
Mm-hmm.
like, do I need competition because I need to like develop my competitive ability, like my ability to translate it to the field? You might need some game reps. The beautiful thing about training in a place like this is we have the tools and the resources to get game-like reps in a practice environment. So it's not, do I train or do I go play 72 games in 80 days of summer ball? It's, I can train and take live ABs every Friday, or I can train and in the back half of my summer, if my velo is around where I need it to be, I can throw live to hitters. I can do intended zone pens.
Mm-hmm.
I can see the trajects down in Arizona.
Yeah,
And
you get hit on the eye
so many
pitch, you get
ABs.
mixed pitch at bats that way. You get live at bats in the facility. Like you said, there's a traject. There's just a ton of ways to get those reps. Now, it's a different story if you're not playing during your spring season because you're a bad defender,
Right.
something like that, right? Or maybe you haven't been playing baseball for that long, so the baseball IQ, if you will,
Sure.
isn't really up to par, right? Like, those are situations where playing is important.
Yeah.
You need to get better at playing baseball. We're talking more specifically here on like skills.
Yeah.
Right. Obviously hitting, pitching, physically. So it's a different story if you need to go get better at defense, right? That's different. But if it's one of the things where like your swing decisions are terrible, your bat to ball skills are bad, you need to make a bat path change. It's like, not only is it easier to make those changes in like a non-competition off season where you're not playing summer ball, you can also use that in our environment, our ecosystem. You can make those changes and you can stress test it. You can heat check it all the time, periodically. Again, part of like that test retest phase and periodizing your plan throughout the off season, throughout the full year. It's like, if you can come in early in the off season, get assessed. Even if you're going to take a little bit of time off, you're going to have the most reflective snapshot of who you were during your season. So you're going to have a better idea, something that's easier to point back towards, like, okay, like we see this in your assessment. These are some reasons why you struggle with XYZ during the season, right? And then from there, you can build out the plan going forward. And earlier on, a little bit more controlled, you can focus more on the physical side, a little bit more on like adding speed, maybe on ramping before you go into velo phase. And then as the off season progresses, because you have more time, you can start to heat check things as you go. You make a bat path change, we can start to stress test it off mixed pitch with the eye pitch or traject, right? You're going to start having live at Bs at the end of the year or the end of the off season. That's when you could start to like develop and refine some of the swing decisions, some of your approach in the box. But if you completely check out physically, everything's really good. And it's like you're struggling because your approach is really, really bad. And you weren't playing because of that. Like maybe that's the type of guy who should play summer ball, or maybe do a blend of both, right? Like you don't have to play the 72 games in the Northwoods. You could train and develop the first half, and then you could go play the second half of the summer, or like the last quarter of the summer, to heat check some of the things you're doing, and then come back in for a couple weeks to like refine things before going back to the fall.
Yeah, and I think this actually kind of rolls into a great transition on like how the transfer portal kind of affects like summer baseball, because I know that's
Mm-hmm.
like not really, it was even when I was coaching at the Division 2 level, it wasn't what it is today. And so like alternatively, what with athletes coming in asking, hey, I'm interested in the transfer portal, I'm interested in like moving, forward in my career, I think like I have a shot, or hey, I just need to find a new home. Like how are we talking to those athletes about, how to best put them in a scenario where they can succeed at a new college?
I mean, we have a lot of experience with that, right? We see a lot of free agents. The difference is now we're seeing younger ones,
Mm-hmm.
basically, right? And it's a kind of a whole new world in that regard. But having players that need a blend of development and opportunity is nothing new. We have dozens, sounds light, every offseason of guys in that boat on the pro side that are looking to throw in something like pro day, get live ABs, send video out, but still need to enhance their tools, because pretty rarely do you see guys with plus tools ready to send stuff out that are free agents, right? Um, and usually that means that some other tool is really lacking. Like if that guy has plus stuff and is a free agent, then either stuff wasn't showing up on the field, or something like the command was wrong, or the game IQ stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like there's plenty of reasons why stuff doesn't translate to the field, and that's going to carry down now to the college level of what do I need to do to get opportunities to get seen, and what do I need to do to make sure that what gets seen is something that matters,
Mm-hmm.
because the timeline matters a lot there. Like I said previously, that 3 month college summer, 4 month, depending on when your school gets out, isn't that much time. And if you need to get seen pretty early in the summer to have an opportunity to get everything set up, like administration wise, going into schools and all of that, that's a more of a new challenge for the college guys that isn't really a thing at the pro level. The timeline's super important, and getting yourself in a way in the spot where if you have stuff that's ready to get seen, getting seen, and then getting back in the gym, getting back in what you need for development as quickly as possible to maximize that short window. Because if you're looking to transfer, you're that D2 guy looking to transfer to a D1, or you're grad transferring, or transferring, I guess these days, from a mid major to Power Four.
Mm-hmm.
What you're getting ready for is different now, right? Like you were good at the level you were at, but you're getting ready for something new, and that's a different spot to be, and you need to maximize every second you have between those 2 points to do it. So being in a place where you can get TrackMan data, potentially see live competition, show exactly where you're at, and then transition back into a training environment. I mean, that's a big reason why free agent pros come to us, right?
Yeah, it's really common. You mentioned having free agents and things like that often, and it's just scaling it down to the college level. It's really common for us to have 10, 15, 20 guys who are looking to transfer during the summer, or maybe they're going from a JUCO or something looking to move up a level. It's really, really common for those guys to start talking to schools and the coaches to immediately reach out to us to want more context on the guys. It's obviously there's more information available now than ever, but you're going to run into certain guys at different levels of college who don't actually have in-game data, where you don't have in-game TrackMan data, you don't have any idea how hard they're actually hitting the ball, anything like that. But your stats are visible. So you can see the stats, right? So you got the guy at like say the D2 NAIA level who had pretty good numbers, but they struck out too much. You see that they're talking to this coach like, oh yeah, I'm training a Driveline. Like I've added some bat speed, I've added some power. And the coach is going to reach out and ask about that. Ask about the human, first of all. That's the first thing they tend to ask about. Ask about the human, ask about their grades, believe it or not. Um, but they're going to want to know. They're going to poke holes in the guy's numbers. Like, hey, it's great. I see that he's added speed, but like he slugged pretty well last year, and like that wasn't one of the holes we're really seeing. We're just seeing that this guy punches out way too much at the NAI level. It's not going to scale here. What do you have on that? It's like, oh yeah, we saw that he had these things going on with this sequencing. This was going on with his bat path. That's like he had to overcommit early. That's part of the reason he was, like caught guessing, guess wrong, swing and miss, more chase, things like that. Like we worked on that. We saw this. This is what happened. This is where he's at now. We think he'd be a really great fit for you. So it's like having the information is really valuable, whether or not you're training with us or somewhere else. Like having an assessment, having a plan, just so it's something to reference to when a coach inevitably reaches out. It's like, hey, I saw this was a problem. What have you done about it? And if you have all that information, person checks out, like you fit their needs, like it's much, much easier to get picked up that way.
Yeah, and honestly, like I've been thinking a lot about this, talking to the both of you about it. It's just like the new world we live in is very much like free agency.
Yeah.
Like the college athletes just get this opportunity to, if they succeed, move on to greener pastures potentially, and then if things aren't working, you don't have to sit out a year and you can move on from that. And so that's kind of, even like the impetus of me wanting to think about potential, like, showcases on our end and talk about those kind of worlds, because it's just very apparent that college coaches aren't really going out to as many high school events, or if anything, they go out to a lot more summer ball games and those sorts of things. And unfortunately, it just seems like there's a world here where it's like, as an athlete, you have the option to like go play summer ball in the middle of nowhere, Kansas, let's just say. And you don't really know who's going to show up. You don't know who's going to see you play. If it's a school you're interested or not, or even if it's a level that you think you could go to. And so I just think that there's a world where we can kind of, hone in that scope, help the athlete continue to move forward in their career and improve, but also like, bring the scouts to them in some regard is kind
Right.
of just like the world I view.
Yeah. And you hit it on the head when you said it's more like free agency now than ever, especially in the world of NIL, right? Like the SEC school, like they're just not incentivized to sign a freshman. There's not incentivized to do it, to sign this guy and develop him, because they could just pick up a free agent in the transfer portal that's going to be game ready, who just raked in the ACC. And now they're going to transfer over and be one of their best players, right? But all that being said, it's more like free agency now than it ever has been with NIL, because you can make yourself some money, right? If you're at the mid-major school, might not have much for the NIL collective, right? But you could have good numbers, and if your skills, your tools match to where you're going to be productive at the higher level colleges, you got a chance to make yourself some money. Even more reason why you should really lean into development in the summers, especially at the younger ages when you're first, especially coming out of high school, but like freshman year, sophomore year of college, like you have an opportunity where there's 3-4 months in the summer where you can increase your velo, increase your bat speed, really clean up your batted ball profile, things like that, to where the SEC school is going to reach out and you're going to make yourself some money. And that, again, that's another thing that is an opportunity to change your life. Whether or not you end up getting drafted out of there, signing as a free agent out of there, you have a chance to make some money before then.
Kress, with those guys with the arms, especially the balance and like what they need to get seen, I think is different for each guy, right? Like if the guy who didn't get any innings in the spring has good stuff, his needs might be a little different than the opposite. Is there a way that you kind of think about evaluating what each guy needs to do to get seen, like get that opportunity? Because I would think it does change on a guy to guy basis what they need.
Yeah, it definitely does. And I mean, we have like our three pillars of, reliability. So, i.e., like just being ready to, answer when the phone rings in the bullpen, for example. And then the other two are like commanded stuff. And so, some of the work that on the back end that our product team has done is just like a fantastic job of quantifying those three pillars and making sure athletes really know where they lie on those sides. So, for one, it's like, being able to sit in a bullpen setting and be able to know like, hey, this is actually like a much better fastball than I ever realized with some of this feedback that I'm getting, and providing that context is kind of what our product team has been spending so much time really focusing on. And then even, secondarily, I feel I've always said, hey, whoever is able to figure out command could make millions of dollars. And in some regard, we're quickly chasing that down with things like intended zones and such. So, I can have a better idea of an athlete that comes in here and actually has like some of those command issues that's really like not allowing them to get more innings with their team or move on to a new spot. And then lastly is just like some of the work that we've even been doing on, just like throwing workload and how to quantify it. I was discussing this with somebody who is just like very in tune with what is going on and on like the arm care side. And he had said something to the point of like, hey, acute to chronic workload seems to just be like the industry standard, and that's kind of like everyone seems to know it. And in some regards, like, yeah, I know that piece is, but some of the smaller granular things of like when you're actually out there training an athlete is like they don't understand what 50% effort is. They don't understand what an A day, a B day, how high intense days work and stuff like that. And so, you know, another kudos to like our product team and being able to like further define those types of things and let our athletes know like, hey, you actually are blowing things out, and that's probably actually the reason why you're throwing slower and not some of the other things that you think it could be. So yeah, that kind of encapsulates all of those points. But like big time kudos to like our product team and being able to allow athletes to have a better idea of what's going on in those regards.
Nice. That's good stuff. When it comes down to like the actual like place that a guy's seen, because like some guys they need to in order to get what they want out of the portal, right? They might need to get seen like game conditions. Some guys bullpen, live ABs. Are there like markers that you would look for like if a guy's saying asking you or coming into Driveline, like what do I do this summer to one, like I need to get better, and two, I need to get seen. In balancing in determining that, like how would you go about, or how do you go about determining that balance of need?
Yeah, I think one of them, is just kind of even trying to take the perspective of what that coach that would be getting a call on this athlete would look like, right? Kind of Tanner was talking about it. It's like if I'm sitting here and I'm going to actually get Tanner Stokey in, and he's this, this pitcher that seems to, check all the boxes. I'm being told that he throws like really, really hard. He's around the zone, but like checking the stats on that athlete is always something that ends up happening. Is like the first way. Like I just go on Google, I look you up, and I'm gonna have to figure out, hey, is this actually something that I want to be involved with? So that's always seems to be the piece. And then on top of that, I think that if you're not happy with how your season went, putting out more tape that shows that some of those issues have been figured out. That's that idea of like splitting your season in half or even your summer in half with, hey, I'm going to train. Sure. I'm going to figure out what's going on and what I need to improve, but also I'm going to put up some stats that actually show that these changes are really coming around, and I'm showing a new face of, who I could be as an athlete.
Yeah,
Sure.
and on top of all that, it's like really just leveraging social media. There's so much information out there, and it's easier now than ever to get seen. You just have to abuse that power as much as you can. It's like one of the most common questions we get from the hitters in gym in the off season, looking to transfer, looking to find a school to play at. And it's just like, first thing you ask them is, well, how many people have you reached out to? Have you started talking to coaches? And generally the answer is no. It's okay. Well, how would you expect anybody to know who you are, know why they'd want you if you're not reaching out, right? Squeaky wheel gets the grease there. And otherwise, if you're spending all offseason training, developing, getting better, like the best thing you could possibly do is document it, post about it, have that information for when the coach does inevitably reach out to you or you get connected from somebody you have information to show them where you were, where you are now, how you got better, what you focused on, and like the really in-depth plan that went into it. So it's just really important to post a lot, market yourself. You have to be your biggest advocate.
The joke that I make all the time is one of our trainers, one of our pitching trainers, Luke DeZados. He was a trainee here, and was coming off of TJ, like trying to get back in that regard. And I really have never seen somebody like actually execute getting recruited as well as that guy did, in the sense that he was posting everything, right? If there was a jump test, right, he was posting his jump test, his jump numbers. If he was continuing to lift heavier weights, he'd post that, just like absolutely annihilating people's timelines to make sure that they know that, like, hey, I'm looking for a new home, and I'm getting better. I'm getting better at Driveline baseball right now, and here are some different videos to show proof of it. And so I used that example with one of the athletes. He was a 2A, and he was down here in Florida during the off season. And I was like, so you see how much he posted when he was looking for a new school? And he's like, yeah, it seems like he's tweeting, at least twice a week, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, so what do you do? And he's like, nothing. I was like, seems like a skill issue. Seems like a big time skill issue that you got. If you really want something like that, and you really want to find a new home, and you want it to be something to be, really excited about, you want, to find that new home, like, it's a skill issue if you're not posting about it. And that's a you issue.
It's not going
right?
to happen
You
for you.
out.
I think
goes back to just having to take control of your career,
100%. I think the simplest way that I think about determining that need is if you just take your graph and put tools, whether that's your tools as a position player or like stuff, command, reliability, stuff Matt talked about on one side, and then the other is stats. Like, good at both, that's Travis, right? Like, what is your goal? Is your goal to just get ready for the season? Is your goal to go 1-1? That's going to tell you which direction to go. That's the fun quadrant to be in of the four. The other three are where most guys are going to fall, right? Like guys with good stuff but bad stats. You need to figure out like what caused that. Like, is it that it's not translating because my stuff's nasty, but my command sucks, and I need to work on my command and show that I'm not that guy anymore to get to where I want to be, whether that's get more innings in my current school or I'm trying to transfer out. Same thing as a position player, like that guy with plus bat speed, plus juice, but he's punching out too much. Has tools, but they're not translating because of other tools, right? It's not that it's not translating because he just needs to get show and get more reps. The guy with good stats but not as good tools, I think like really clear where the bottleneck is there, right? Develop better tools. Those are the guys that we see the most of. Those are the guys that path is really clear. Develop the tools. Should be playing minimal competition, especially in the first half of your summer. And then guys in the bottom left, there's no question, right? If you don't have stats or tools, like, you got to, as quickly as possible, develop tools, because the first step is having the tools and then showing them. You can't show something you don't have. So those guys on that bottom half of that graph, the development path is super clear. That guys at that top part where the tools are there, it's a little bit more introspection and looking at your stats and being super, super honest with yourself. And if that's part of that's going to be hard to do, and part of that is like you might not even have the resources to do it if you're not somewhere within game data. You don't have access to tools, and that's the guy that like coming out somewhere like this is super important for. It's, and like earlier the better, right? Like best day was yesterday, next best day is today.
Yep. That's well said. You guys got anything else?
I don't think so. I think we got to a pretty good spot. How about?
I think we're wrapped here, fellas.
Yep, I think we're wrapped. Good stuff.
All right, that's it. It's cut. Or is that action?
Remember to like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe. DriveLineBaseball.com. Matt Kress putting out fire blogs.